So this approach that I'm using in this sample repository of adding WordPress core as a dependency to the project might sound a bit controversial. In fact, the local WP or WPenv, they kind of take care of this step. So why would we ever want to pull the WordPress as a dependency into here? Now the truth is that by default, when you're using local WP or WPenv, you don't even get access to those WordPress core files. So in order to navigate or find references to functions and classes that are in WordPress core and used by your code, you just simply don't have access to them unless you enable or expose that directory of the installed WordPress to your code editor. So instead of kind of going backwards from exposing whatever the container has pulled down or figured it needs, we're going to add the WordPress itself as a dependency at a very known version to this project, and we'll get two benefits. So first one is we'll get access to the WordPress core files, and the second one is we can swap it out to a different version when we're running the tests. So if we wanted to try out a latest beta feature of Gutenberg, we could pull in the trunk version of WordPress core by simply requiring in the trunk version of the WordPress itself. So let's verify that we do indeed have the Composer installed globally as an application. So we can do brew install Composer. And it does say that we do have that installed, and I can also do Composer -- version, saying that this is this version that I have available. Now, where do I get WordPress core as a Composer package? Well, the reality is that there is no official WordPress package available from the Packagist registry. And Packagist is the Composer, the official Composer registry, similar as the NPM for a node. So, and if you search here for WordPress/WordPress, you don't find a official version of this. Fortunately though, we have a reliable and trusted source of this at all kinds of configurations. So Roots, it's a organization and a project, has all kinds of great packages available through this. It's a whole ecosystem of various utilities, reusable elements that allow you to really build WordPress applications, but also plugins and themes using kind of standardized and unified approach. But for now, we're only interested in the WordPress core. So as you can see here, we have multiple versions of this available. So we have the WordPress meta package, basically this, which calls then the WordPress no content. And what it means that no content is that the WP contents directory and its default themes and plugins are then not available. This is actually great because, as we saw on our sample project, we are in control, or we want to be in control of this WP contents folder. This is a very typical setup for a project where you want to decouple your files from the WordPress core so that the WordPress core can be shifted around and upgraded independent from your code that you've written. So, and this package allows us to do that. So how do we install it? We don't have any composer.json files here. So what happens if we call composer require? So that's the same as install in npm, and then we say roots/WordPress. Well, turns out it all worked fine. Now it's asking me to confirm that it's going to be able to run the WordPress core installer. So that's another helper utility that is responsible for actually putting that WordPress core files in the location that we need. So we're going to say yes and allow it to continue installing. Notice that it did two things. So it created this composer.json file with a require section for the Roots WordPress package at this version. And it also allowed the Roots WordPress core installer to be considered an allowed plugin for the Composer. So Composer itself also has an extensive plugin ecosystem that we're going to be relying on very extensively throughout this project. Let's look at what other changes did this make. We now see that we have a vendor directory and we have a WordPress itself. So there's a dedicated subfolder in our project that says, hey, this is WordPress. How do we update our local environment to now use this WordPress core? And the solution to this is twofold. Remember, our index.php, this is the entry point of all the requests coming into our application. So if the web server does not find an existing file at that path, the requested path from the URL on the web server, it's going to send it or rewrite that request to the index.php, which is then the entry point for the WordPress itself. So here, instead of printing out that PHP info, what we can do is we can actually require once, then referring to this current directory, we are going to navigate into the WordPress subdirectory that was just added by Composer, and then in there we have index.php. This is required, and that's all it takes to instantiate WordPress. If we go to our browser and refresh that page, so localhost 8080, nothing works because we have stopped our container. So let's start it again with docker compose up. And let's leave it running. Now if I refresh it, we get WordPress. So WordPress files got loaded. Notice that it also correctly resolved where the WordPress is located. So let's go and click on Next. So it's asking for our database name. We specified that, right, as part of our environment configuration. And that the user is WP, same with password and database name. So we can say WP, username WP, password WP. Database is, instead of being the local host, is actually MySQL. Now, if I left the local host here, it would be referring to this WP container. And within this WordPress container, we only have the Apache and PHP. There's no database service running, so it could not connect to it. So this is one of the typical kind of edge cases that many developers run into when configuring this kind of setup. And then finally, we have the database table prefix, which we're going to leave at default. Now, when we've done that, we've set this up, it offers us the next step of the famous WordPress 5-minute install. So we can say WP shout fast track, password admin and admin, just for the simplicity of it. And then we can say admin@example.com and install WordPress. And that's it. We've installed WordPress. We can log in here as well, and everything works as it should. So this kind of setup where WordPress is in a subdirectory, but the actual root of the site is not under the WordPress subdirectory, is officially supported. In fact, this is one of the reasons why WordPress core has the two different addresses or URLs. So it has the WordPress address and the site address. WordPress address is the location or your URL where the actual WordPress core files are. So in our case, this is the subdirectory, the WordPress subfolder. Now the site address is the front-facing URL of all the resources, pages, posts, all like that. So you can safely remove this site address, the WordPress directory, from that. And with the magic of htaccess and the rewrite rules, we can get the nice looking permalinks still, while the WordPress core files are nicely separated for the purpose of isolating our application code from the dependency that is WordPress itself. Let's look at the modifications we have to make to the htaccess files in order to make this work.